The electric car segment is expanding at something of a fearsome rate, with loads of new models arriving in quick succession. Now, Mercedes isn't shying away from this either, and it is too producing loads of new EVs. And one that's core to this acceleration is this, the EQA. It's Merc's new baby electric SUV, designed to take some of the technological aspects of its higher flying models and bring them into a more family-friendly version. But if you're looking at the existing petrol or diesel GLA, why should you be looking at this electric version? Well, that's what we're going to find out today. You can see quite a common theme in the design of Mercedes' new EQ models. The EQA in particular takes some of the styling elements of the EQE that we looked at previously and takes them into a slightly higher riding model. So we've got that smoothed off grille, which of course is what electric cars generally have to improve aerodynamics, and then it tapers around into quite a stylish and closed off rear end. Against the regular GLA, we think it looks pretty good. If you've had an experience of any of Merc's latest car interiors, then you'll be pretty up to speed with the way the EQA feels inside. We've got that same wraparound screen setup that there are on so many other Mercedes models, and though it does differ from the full tablet style screen that we saw in the EQE that we reviewed recently, it still has loads of functionality, and you operate it via this touchpad system down here, which is actually really responsive and quite easy to get up to speed with. In terms of fit and finish, there are some scratchy plastics here and there, down there and around the glove box, which don't feel quite befitting of a car costing around about £45,000. But having said that, they're nice and hard wearing, so if you're going to be using this for family use, then they're going to stand up to the test of time and stand up to loads of daily abuse. Then, in terms of practicality and storage, we've got some nice deep cup holders here, another section there for your keys or for loose items and change. And then in the middle, there's this deep section, which is really good for bottles or for valuables that you want to keep out of sight. And there's also some really good USB-C charging ports, so you can keep your devices topped up while you're on the move. As the smallest electric SUV in the Mercedes electric car lineup, you can't blame the EQA for not being able to offer the most amount of space inside, but I feel like it doesn't do too badly. Mercedes has been quite clever, and they fitted these concave seats. So even though the seat is in my position and I'm just under 6 foot, I've got a good amount of room for my knees, plenty of room for my feet, and loads of headroom. That's something that's really impressive in here. So if you've got taller passengers frequently riding in the back, then this is going to be a good option for you. I feel like these seats are quite weirdly flat, and they go quite deep though, so it's a slightly unnatural seating position, but one that I'm pretty sure you get used to quite quickly. I will say, however, that the seat in the middle is reasonably snug, so I'd look at this more as a proper 4-seater with an occasional 5th seat rather than an outright 5-seater. There's also a transmission hump in the middle, which is going to mean that your feet are going to have to split out whoever's sitting in the middle. Fit and finish is good. Again, there's some of those rough and ready plastics, but this is a family-focused model. And the only thing that I do think is a bit mean is that you only get one USB-C charger in the middle, so there are going to be some squabbles about who is getting to charge up their devices. However, you do get ISOFIX points for both of the outside seats, and the doors open reasonably widely, so you wouldn't have too much trouble getting a car seat in and out. I think overall it's pretty good, a little bit snug in places, but around what you'd expect for this size of car. At 340 litres, the boot of the EQA is actually 95 litres down on the one that you'd get in the regular GLA petrol or diesel. So it's worth bearing that in mind. If outright capacity is what you want, then actually those regular powered cars are going to be slightly more spacious. Having said that, the boot in the EQA is nicely square, and we've got a low load lip, so you shouldn't have to hit too many things when you're loading heavier items in there. You can see at the moment that I've got the charging cables in there, but you're going to keep one of those at home because you'll likely be charging at home, and that frees up some extra space. But I like the fact that it's nice and square, and you've got some pockets at the side for those looser items. Against a car like the Volkswagen ID.4 with its 542 litre boot, it's massively down, but for this size and type of car, I think it's pretty reasonable. Having said that, of course, again, if you are wanting outright capacity, the petrol and diesel cars are going to be better. So let's get the headline figures out of the way first with the Mercedes EQA. Mercedes say that you should be able to do around 263 miles on a full charge. Now, I've got just over 3/4 of a tank, and it's showing 190 miles. So I guess because of the lower temperatures that we're in, because of the winter climate and how they affect batteries, you're going to be some way short of that full 260 miles. But during the summertime, that's a pretty decent range. I'd say that's very respectable and about on the line with rivals like the ENIAC or the Volkswagen ID4 or the Cooper Born, any of those kind of area ones. It can accept a rapid charge, of course, and Mercedes say that when you're hooked up to an equivalent rapid charger, a 10 to 80% charge should take about 40 minutes. When you plug it into an 11 kilowatt home charger, that's the only time that Mercedes quotes via an uprated 11 kilowatt charger, a full charge should take around 5 hours, probably 5 hours 45. So more than quick enough for an overnight stop to get a full battery. But charging aside, what is it like to drive? Well, the acceleration is good, as we've come to expect from EVs. It's nice and quick. 0 to 60 takes just under 8.9 seconds. So there's plenty of roll-on performance, and that immediate take-up that you get with EVs is just the same here in the EQA. I'm getting quite a bit of wind noise from the probably upright position of the car, and there's a little bit of tyre roar too. But again, you'd expect that from the GLA, you'd expect that from a car in this sort of department, in this area and size. The steering is good, there's not really that much feel to it, but it's nice and accurate, and you can pick your way through lanes quite easily. The ride quality, well, I'm finding it a little bit brittle. It's something that you just find with quite a lot of EVs because they're dealing with quite a lot of weight, and the EQA weighs over 2 tons. You're dealing with quite a lot of extra weight, and the suspension has to be firmed up in order to compensate for this. So as a result, you get a slightly firmer ride. It just feels a little bit fidgety, and particularly when you're going at slower speeds where you can't work through that pace, it just gets upset, and you can feel those road imperfections coming through into the car. It also can feel a bit bobbly from time to time. Again, that's down to the suspension and the weight that you're getting. As with other EVs, you get regenerative braking in the EQA too. And unlike some EVs, it's not simply by putting it through into a specific mode on the gear selector. Here, you use the traditional gear paddles to control how much regen you want. I really like that setup because it gives you a little bit more involvement. EVs can sometimes feel a little bit like they're alienating you from the driving experience, but by adding it in, it feels a little bit like you're doing some of the gear changing that you do in a normal combustion engine car. So, for instance, in a traditional Mercedes, in one of its AMG or AMG Lines cars, you pull the left paddle to move down the gears. So if you're going for an overtake, you'd pull down, get a gear lower, and then you go forward. In this car, it adds to the regen. So you pull 1 for a certain amount of regeneration, you pull 2 for more, and then you pull again, and you get the maximum. It will slow itself down, and I'm not touching the brake here. Likewise, when you want to reduce the amount of regen, you press the right hand paddle, and this reduces it right the way back up to the point where you lift off the gas and it will coast. So you'd want that setting for the motorway. I think that's really cool because it means that you just feel a little bit more like you're driving the car. And what I tend to do when you've got that sort of setup is you're driving it coasting like this, so you can let it free roll when you're on the straights, and then when you're approaching a corner, rather than going for the brakes, you use the regen to slow the car down instead. So you come up to a corner like the one I'm coming up to now, you tap 2 times on the regen, and it starts slowing it down like you would use the brakes. So you don't touch the pedal, you just use the paddles instead. I think that's really cool. But let us know what you think of that in the comments. Would you enjoy driving a car with that sort of system? I think it's pretty interesting, but that's just me. Like other EVs, the EQA's driving experience is quite relaxing because of the nature of the quiet powertrain that you've got supplying all of the moving force to the car. But as I said, it just is being interrupted by quite a large amount of wind and tyre noise, which is quite surprising because most manufacturers try and dial out as much of that as they can because it's showcased so much more by the fact that there's no engine thrumming away ahead of you. I will also say that the seats in this car are nice and comfortable and supportive. They're not too heavily bolstered. I quite like a heavily bolstered seat, but that's just what works for me. They're reasonably flat, so you can get comfortable in them straight away. And this car does have manual adjustment for the seats. But again, manual adjustment is good because it doesn't go wrong. I think that the EQA is a really nice new addition to the electric car world. I think it's nicely packaged inside. It's got loads of headroom, which I find really impressive, and the level of tech on board is very good too. The range is also quite impressive, and I think that's crucial for an electric car, of course, as is the charging speed. It's just a bit of a shame that the boot space is down on the regular GLA petrol or diesel, but I think there's enough capacity there to suit most applications. Certainly, as a new entry into the broad spectrum of EVs, it's definitely worth checking out. Thank you for watching this new car review on the Mercedes EQA. Now, if you have enjoyed this video, please leave us a like below and let us know in the comment section what you think of the EQA. Would you pick it out as your next EV if you're thinking of making the switch? And since you're here, please remember to subscribe to the Motors.co.uk YouTube channel and hit that bell icon so you're notified every time we upload a new video.